Welcome to Verified Fears. Tonight, we're riding shotgun with the people who spend their lives on the darkest highways in America. Professional drivers with decades of experience, who know the difference between exhaustion and something wrong. They've learned the hard way that some roads have rules that physics doesn't recognize, and some cargo isn't supposed to arrive at its destination. These are their stories. Buckle up. I watched mile marker 247 pass my window 3 times in 20 minutes, and each time the number was lower. 22 years I've been driving overnight routes through the Pacific Northwest. I know every rest stop, every curve, every exit between Seattle and Portland like I know the dashboard of my Peterbilt. I've seen deer frozen in headlights, watched fog roll across the highway like something alive, pulled over for every kind of weather you can imagine. But I never believed in trucker ghost stories. Not until the night I found the backward highway. It was a Tuesday, sometime past 2 a.m., the kind of night where you're the only headlights for miles, where the white line becomes hypnotic and you have to fight to keep your mind sharp. I was running a standard haul right on schedule when I passed mile marker 247. Nothing unusual about it, just another reflective sign catching my lights as I rolled past at 70 miles per hour. Then I saw mile marker 246, then 245. I blinked hard, thinking exhaustion was playing tricks. But no, the markers were counting down, running backward from my direction of travel. I checked my GPS. It showed me progressing normally, gaining miles, moving forward along my route exactly as planned. The little blue dot crawled steadily northeast. But outside my window, the physical markers on the roadside were counting in the wrong direction. I kept driving, watching each marker pass. 244, 243, 242. My truck was moving forward. I could feel it in the engine, see it in my speedometer, confirm it on every piece of technology in my cab. But the highway itself insisted I was going backward. At mile marker 238, I made a decision. I slowed down, signaled, and pulled onto the shoulder. Sat there with my hazards on, trying to make sense of it. Maybe there'd been construction, maybe they'd replaced the markers incorrectly, maybe I was more tired than I thought. I pulled out my logbook, checked my hours, plenty of drive time left. Checked my phone. Signal was weak but present. Everything normal except those markers. I merged back onto the highway and kept going. 237, 236, 235. The countdown continued with mechanical precision. My GPS still showed forward progress. I tried the CB radio, scanning through channels, but picked up only static. At this hour, most drivers were either parked for the night or running different routes. That's when I decided to test it. At the next exit, I'd turn around. If the markers were really backward, turning around should make them run forward again. It was a simple, logical solution. Except the highway wouldn't let me. I signaled for the exit at mile marker 234, started to decelerate, began the curve onto the off-ramp. But the road, and I know how insane this sounds, the road itself curved me back. Not sharply, not violently. Just a gentle, persistent arc that guided my truck back onto the main highway facing the same direction I'd been traveling. I tried again at the next exit. Same result. The pavement seemed to flow like water, directing me forward no matter which way I steered. My hands were shaking now. 22 years of driving, and I'd never felt a road override my steering before. I checked the time on my phone. 2:47 a.m. Then I checked again. Still 2:47 a.m. I watched the display for a full minute. It didn't change. Mile marker 220, 219, 218. I started talking to myself, narrating what I was seeing to keep myself grounded. Mile marker 217 passing on the right. GPS shows me at highway mile 263. Time is frozen at 2:47 a.m. Truck is operating normally. I am not tired. This is real. At mile marker 200, I picked up something on the CB. Not static this time. Voices. Scattered conversation. Someone giving a traffic report. Then I heard myself. My own voice, exactly as it had sounded 10 minutes earlier when I'd been testing the radio, saying, "This is Unit 447. Anybody reading me on this channel?" The hair on my neck stood up. I grabbed the CB handset, pressed the transmit button, said nothing. On the receiver, I heard the click of a handset being keyed. Then silence. My silence, from 10 minutes ago, being played back to me. The mile markers continued their countdown. 185, 172, 158. I kept driving because there was nothing else to do. Stopping didn't help. Turning didn't help. Time had stopped moving forward and was maybe, possibly, moving backward with the mile markers. At marker 134, I saw something that made me slam on the brakes. My truck. My exact truck, same model, same color, same company logo on the door. Traveling in the opposite lane, heading the direction I'd come from. I stared as it passed me. The cab was empty. No driver behind the wheel. Just an unmanned Peterbilt rolling smoothly down the highway in perfect control. I sat there, engine idling, emergency brake engaged, trying to breathe normally. That's when I noticed something else. Through my side mirror, I could see mile marker 134 behind me. And through my windshield, approaching ahead, was mile marker 134 again. I was parked between two identical markers. The countdown reached 0 at 3:23 a.m., or what should have been 3:23 a.m. My phone still showed 2:47. Mile marker 0 stood on the right shoulder, and I rolled past it slowly, waiting to see what came next. Negative numbers. Mile marker 1, mile marker 2, mile marker 5. The signs looked official, standard Department of Transportation reflective markers, but displaying impossible designations. I kept driving into negative numbers because at this point, what else was there to do? Call the police and tell them what? That I'd found a highway that counted backward past 0? At mile marker 13, the road split. Not a typical fork or exit. A perfect division into two identical highways running parallel. Both looked exactly the same. Same width, same line markings, same shoulder condition. I had maybe 3 seconds to choose. I took the left fork. The moment my tires crossed onto that path, everything changed. Sound returned. I hadn't even noticed it was muted until normal highway noise flooded back in. My phone time jumped forward, suddenly reading 3:45 a.m. The CB radio crackled with current traffic reports, voices I recognized from my regular route. And ahead of me, mile markers running in the correct direction. 188, 189, 190. I checked my GPS. My blue dot sat exactly where it should be, right on schedule, approaching my delivery destination. According to the trip computer, I'd been driving for exactly the expected time. Everything was normal, except when I checked my phone's calendar, it was Friday. I'd left on Tuesday night. Somewhere between mile marker 247 and mile marker 13, I'd lost 3 days. I made my delivery at 6:30 a.m., right on time according to my GPS, but the receiving dock supervisor looked confused when I pulled in. "You're early," he said. "We weren't expecting this load until Monday." He showed me the delivery order. My route was scheduled for a Monday arrival, but I'd left Tuesday and arrived Friday. The timestamp on my delivery receipt showed I'd somehow gained 13 hours instead of losing 3 days. I've driven that route 40 times since then. Never found the backward highway again. Never saw that split at mile marker 13. But sometimes, late at night when I'm alone on the road, I catch myself looking for it. Because somewhere between mile marker 0 and -13, there's a road that gives you time instead of taking it. And I need to know where that borrowed time comes from. I need to know if somewhere, on some other version of that highway, there's a driver who lost 13 hours they'll never get back. A driver who's still counting down, still passing through negative numbers, still looking for the fork that leads home. Every route I drive now, I watch the mile markers carefully. I check them against my GPS, compare them to my memory, make sure they're counting in the right direction. Because I know now that the highway doesn't always follow the rules we think govern distance and time. And I wonder, if I find that split again, if I see -13 on a mile marker and take the right fork instead of the left, would I lose those 13 hours I gained? Or would I find something else? Another driver, maybe, who took the wrong path and is still driving backward, still counting down. Still trapped in 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night that never ends? The road remembers. I know it does. And somewhere out there, it's still counting backward, waiting for the next driver who needs to borrow time they don't have. I just hope they choose the right fork. She said thank you, and the words came out of her mouth as black moths that landed on my dashboard and spelled it out. I've been driving regional routes for 5 years now, running the coastal highways between distribution centers. It's good work, steady pay, and I've always had one absolute rule: no hitchhikers, ever. Doesn't matter if it's pouring rain, doesn't matter if they look harmless, doesn't matter if I've got an empty passenger seat. That seat stays empty. Until the night I broke my own rule. It was coming down in sheets, the kind of rain that turns your windshield into a waterfall even with the wipers on full speed. Visibility maybe 20 feet ahead. I was crawling along at 40 miles per hour, way behind schedule, when my headlights caught her standing on the shoulder. Business clothes completely soaked through. No umbrella, no jacket, just standing there in the downpour with her thumb out. I should have kept driving. Every instinct I developed over 5 years told me to keep driving. But something about the way she stood there, absolutely still despite the rain hammering down, made me pull over. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the thought of my own sister stranded somewhere in weather like this. Maybe it was just stupid compassion. She opened the passenger door and climbed in without a word, water pooling immediately on the seat beneath her. She was maybe 40, dark hair plastered to her face, wearing what had probably been an expensive suit before the rain destroyed it. "Thank you," she said. And the words came out wrong. They left her mouth as small, dark shapes, dozens of them, fluttering across the cab like moths or butterflies made of shadow. They landed on my dashboard in a neat line and arranged themselves into letters. THANKYOU. Then they dissolved, leaving faint marks on the plastic like water stains. I stared at the dashboard, then at her, then back at the dashboard. My first thought was exhaustion. I'd been driving for 9 hours straight. Maybe I was seeing things. But the marks were still there. Physical proof that something had just emerged from her mouth and written words on my truck. "You're welcome," I managed to say, my voice coming out higher than normal. I put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the highway, hands gripping the wheel too tight, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. She sat quietly for the first few miles, staring straight ahead through the rain-streaked windshield. I kept glancing at her from the corner of my eye, looking for something wrong, some explanation. She seemed normal now, just a soaked woman grateful for a ride out of the storm. Then she spoke again. Bad day. This time I was watching. The words emerged from her mouth as tiny shadow shapes again, but these were different. Longer, thinner, more like tendrils than moths. They crawled up the windshield from the inside, spreading across the glass in dark lines that spelled out "bad day" before dissolving. But they didn't fully dissolve. They left traces, like oil smears, blocking small sections of my already limited visibility. "What are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She turned to look at me, and more shapes came out with her words. "I'm not sure anymore." The shapes this time were faster, more aggressive, scattering across the cab's interior and leaving their message on multiple surfaces. The passenger window, the roof liner, the back of my seat. I felt my heart hammering. The rational part of my brain was screaming that this wasn't possible, that words don't manifest physically, that I needed to pull over and get her out of my truck. But another part, the part that had driven thousands of miles through empty nights and seen things I couldn't explain, knew this was real. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Forward," she said, and the word appeared on the road itself, burning into the wet asphalt ahead of us in letters I could see through the windshield. The word stretched across both lanes, glowing faintly in my headlights before fading as I drove over it. That's when I noticed something else. She wasn't wet anymore. Her clothes, which had been absolutely drenched when she got in, were now completely dry. Her hair was styled, no longer plastered to her skull. It was like the rain had never touched her. "How long have you been out there?" I asked, trying to keep her talking, trying to understand. "I don't remember," she said. And the shapes that came out were different again. These ones looked like question marks made of smoke, floating between us before dissipating. Time works differently when you're words instead of thoughts. I didn't know what that meant. Didn't want to know. I just wanted her out of my truck. But we were on a remote stretch of highway with nowhere to stop safely, and the rain was getting worse. She started talking more freely then, as if my questions had opened something. She talked about her job, about meetings and deadlines and corporate pressure. And with every sentence, more shapes emerged. They filled the cab now, crowding the air between us, leaving their messages on every surface. The words overlapped, creating layers of meaning I couldn't process. Some spelled out what she was saying. Others spelled out things she wasn't saying. Darker thoughts, contradictions, truths buried under the surface conversation. "There's an accident ahead," she said suddenly, and I felt ice in my stomach. The shapes that came out this time were different from all the others. They were detailed, three-dimensional, showing me images instead of words. I saw twisted metal, broken glass, a truck on its side. My truck, my license plate. The shapes arranged themselves across my windshield, blocking my view of the actual road, showing me instead what was about to happen. I slammed on the brakes, swerving instinctively, and the truck fish-tailed on the wet pavement. For 3 terrifying seconds, we were sliding sideways, the trailer jackknifing, and I fought the wheel trying to regain control. We came to a stop at an angle across both lanes, hazard lights automatically engaging. Silence. Rain pounding on the roof, my breathing ragged in the quiet cab. "Get out," I said. My voice was shaking. "Get out of my truck right now." She turned to look at me with eyes that seemed too dark, too deep. "I'm sorry you saw that," she said, and the words that came out were the worst yet. They were hungry-looking things, with edges like teeth, and they didn't just land on surfaces. They burrowed into them, eating into the plastic and fabric of my cab's interior. But worse than the shapes was what they did to my memory. As those words dissolved, I felt the memory of picking her up start to fade. I could feel it leaving my mind like water draining, the details getting fuzzy, the decision to stop for her becoming unclear. Within seconds, I couldn't remember why I'd pulled over. Couldn't remember seeing anyone in the rain. I shook my head, trying to hold on to the memory, but it was like trying to grab smoke. When I fully came back to myself, I was alone. The passenger door was open, rain blowing in, the seat empty. I didn't remember stopping, didn't remember anyone getting out. But the door was definitely open, and I was definitely pulled over at an angle on the highway. I got out into the rain and walked around the truck, checking for damage, checking for anything that would explain why I was stopped here. Nothing. Everything was fine. I was just stopped. For no reason I could remember. Back in the cab, I grabbed my phone to check the time, see how much schedule I'd lost. That's when I noticed something on the passenger seat. A business card, but wrong. The letters weren't printed, they were made of something else. Small, dark shapes pressed flat, arranged into words. A company name I didn't recognize. A phone number that seemed to shift when I looked at it directly. I picked it up carefully. The shapes that formed the letters felt like dried moth wings. I looked up that company later, after I delivered my cargo and made it to a rest stop where I could use my laptop. Found newspaper archives from 40 years ago. The company had existed, a regional trucking outfit. Went bankrupt after a series of accidents. Their entire fleet crashed over a 3-month period, all on the same stretch of highway. Every driver reported the same thing. They'd swerved to avoid a woman standing in the road, a hitchhiker who wasn't there. The accidents had happened on the exact stretch of highway where I'd stopped tonight. I still drive that route twice a week, haven't seen her again. But sometimes when I'm alone in the cab late at night, I see words floating at the edge of my vision. Not fully formed, just suggestions of language, trying to spell out something I've already forgotten. And sometimes I find small dark marks on my dashboard that I can't explain, arranged in patterns that almost look like letters, telling me things I don't want to know about what's ahead on the road. I never pick up hitchhikers anymore. Not even in the rain. Not even when they look like they need help. Because I know now that some people aren't people anymore. They're just words looking for someone to read them, messages without meaning, language that's forgotten how to communicate anything except its own existence. And once you've read those words, once they've landed on your dashboard and spelled themselves out in shapes that shouldn't exist, you can't unread them. They stay with you, pressed into your memory like moths preserved in glass, whispering things you've forgotten in a voice that sounds like your own conscience telling you to stop, to pull over, to help. But I won't stop. Not anymore. Because the next time those words spell themselves out, they might spell my name. On the CB, I heard myself giving the exact same traffic report I'd given 30 seconds earlier, from a truck that was keeping perfect pace with us on a highway that didn't exist. 30 years I've been driving convoys. Long-haul specialist, 3 truck teams, moving freight across the country in coordinated formations. The 3 of us, me, Jackson, and Martinez. We've been running together for a decade now. We know each other's voices better than we know our own families. Know each other's driving patterns, what jokes will come over the CB at what mile marker, who needs coffee at which rest stop. After 10 years, a convoy stops being 3 separate trucks and becomes one unit with 3 parts. That's why we noticed immediately when things went wrong. We were running our standard overnight route through the desert. That long, empty stretch where you can see headlights from 20 miles away, and the highway runs straight enough that you could fall asleep and still stay in your lane. I was lead truck, Jackson middle, Martinez bringing up the rear. 2 a.m., perfect clear night, not another vehicle in sight. Martinez came over the CB first. "You guys seeing those lights?" I checked my mirrors. Behind Martinez, nothing but empty highway dissolving into darkness. What lights? East side, maybe half a mile out. 3 sets of headlights. Looks like they're running parallel to us. I looked to my right, squinting into the darkness beyond the desert scrub. There, 3 sets of headlights, perfectly spaced, moving at exactly our speed. But there was no highway out there. Just flat desert, no road, no infrastructure, nothing but sand and rock. "That's impossible," Jackson said over the radio. "There's no road there. We'd see it on GPS." But all 3 of us could see those lights now, keeping perfect pace with us. Same spacing we maintained, same speed, running parallel maybe half a mile east, ghosting us through terrain where no vehicle should be able to travel. "Could be off-roaders," I suggested, though I didn't believe it. "Off-road vehicles don't maintain highway speeds, don't keep perfect formation, don't run in the middle of the night with no visible destination." We drove in silence for a few minutes, all of us watching those impossible headlights. Then my CB crackled with my own voice. "You guys seeing those lights?" It was me, my exact voice, my exact inflection, asking the question Martinez had asked 3 minutes earlier. But I hadn't said anything. My hand wasn't on the transmit button. "What the hell was that?" Jackson's voice came through, tight with tension. Before I could answer, the CB crackled again. Martinez's voice. "East side, maybe half a mile out. 3 sets of headlights. Looks like they're running parallel to us." Our entire conversation being played back to us from the parallel convoy. But not just played back. They were having the conversation now, in real time, as if they were 3 minutes behind us in the same moment. "This is lead truck, radio check," I said into my CB, keeping my voice steady. "Jackson, Martinez, confirm you're receiving." "Confirmed," Jackson said immediately. "Confirmed," Martinez echoed. And then, from the parallel convoy, my voice again. "This is lead truck, radio check." Followed by 2 other voices, Jackson's and Martinez's, confirming reception. They were us, a perfect duplicate convoy, running on a highway that didn't exist, having our exact conversations with a 3-minute delay. "Alpha?" I said into the radio, a simple test word. "Alpha confirmed," came Jackson's voice. "Alpha confirmed," came Martinez. And from the parallel convoy, at the exact same instant, Martinez confirmed, "Omega." The word came through clear and strong, in a voice that was mine but wasn't mine, speaking a word I hadn't said but had somehow been expecting to hear. "They're running opposite," Jackson said, and I could hear the fear creeping into his voice now. Same direction, same speed, but opposite conversation. Everything we say, they say the reverse. I looked at my GPS, confirmed what I already knew. 1 highway, 1 route, 3 trucks. The parallel convoy shouldn't exist in any configuration, but especially not running on non-existent pavement through open desert while simultaneously broadcasting our reversed conversations. For the next 20 minutes, we drove in silence, all 3 of us watching those lights. They never got closer, never fell back, never deviated from their parallel course. Perfect mirror formation. Except they were real as we were, and running on a highway that every map in existence said wasn't there. The junction appeared in my headlights without warning. 1 second, straight, empty highway. The next, a split. Two paths diverging at a shallow angle, both looking identical, both lit with the same road reflectors and lane markings. But the angle was wrong. One path continued where the highway should continue. The other angled slightly east, toward where the parallel convoy was running. "You seeing this?" Martinez's voice cracked over the CB. "Confirmed," I said, slowing down, trying to process what I was looking at. "Jackson, what's your GPS showing?" "Nothing. Still shows single highway, no junction, no split. But I'm looking right at it." The parallel convoy was converging now, their three sets of headlights angling toward the same junction from the opposite direction. We were both heading for the same point from impossible angles. "Stay in formation," I said, making the decision. "We take the left path, maintain spacing, don't stop." "Copy that," Jackson said. "Copy," Martinez confirmed. I guided my truck onto the left fork, watching my mirrors to ensure Jackson and Martinez followed. The parallel convoy took their corresponding fork, and for 3 impossible seconds, all 6 trucks occupied the same physical space. I could see through my windshield into another cab, where another version of me sat behind another steering wheel, hands at 10 and 2, staring back at me with the same expression of horror I knew I was wearing. Our eyes met across impossible dimensions. His mouth moved, forming words. "Turn back." Then the junction resolved. The moment passed, and the parallel convoy was gone. Empty desert to my right. Single highway ahead. 3 trucks running in normal formation. My GPS blinked and updated, showing us exactly where we should be, right on schedule. Except when I checked my cargo manifest on the dashboard computer, the weight showed double. Each truck reporting exactly twice the loaded weight we'd started with. "Jackson, check your manifest," I said into the CB. Silence for a moment. Then, "Showing double weight. How is that possible?" "Same here," Martinez confirmed. "My truck thinks I'm carrying twice the cargo." We arrived at the warehouse depot at dawn, pulled into the delivery bays, and the weigh scales confirmed what our manifests had shown. Double weight. Each truck carrying exactly twice the documented cargo, despite visual confirmation that we had only our original loads. The warehouse workers unloaded us using forklifts, and I watched them carefully. They removed the exact number of pallets we'd loaded, the exact same items. But the scales kept showing double weight, kept tallying twice the inventory, kept recording a delivery that physically couldn't fit in our trailers. Security footage, they told us later, showed 3 trucks arriving with normal cargo. The footage showed standard unloading procedures, documented quantities, nothing unusual. But the payment we received was for exactly double the contracted amount. The warehouse inventory system showed double stock received. Every system that measured or recorded our delivery registered twice what had physically been transported. We still run that route. Same 3 trucks, same drivers, same overnight desert highway. But now, when we pass that junction, and we do pass it every time, though it's never visible until we're right on top of it, our CB picks up an empty channel that's always transmitting. Static mostly, but underneath the static, voices, our voices, having conversations we had months ago, weeks ago, yesterday. Running that same route over and over. Trapped in a loop of highway that exists and doesn't exist simultaneously. Sometimes Jackson picks up his own voice from 6 months ago, talking about his daughter's graduation. Sometimes Martinez hears himself discussing a route we haven't run yet. Sometimes I hear all 3 of us having conversations we've never had, discussing deliveries we've never made, running highways that don't appear on any map. The duplicate convoy is still out there, running parallel to us on every route we drive. We can't see their headlights anymore, but we hear them on that empty CB channel. Broadcasting in reverse, speaking our words backwards, delivering cargo that exists in negative space. And sometimes, late at night when the desert is empty and the highway runs straight for 100 miles, I wonder which convoy is the real one. Are we the original trucks, delivering actual cargo, getting paid for physical freight? Or are we the duplicates, the ghost convoy running on impossible highways, transporting cargo that exists only because someone needs to believe we're real? The payment clears. The cargo gets delivered. The warehouse workers unload something from our trailers, even if we can't quite agree on what it is or how much of it there should be. Reality has accommodated both versions, made room for duplicate trucks carrying duplicate freight, existing in the same space, but separated by something thinner than time. I think about that moment at the junction, when I looked through my windshield into another cab and saw myself staring back. Both of us were real. Both convoys were physical, tangible, present. And in that 3-second overlap, we both understood the truth. The highway had decided we were the same thing, just existing in different states of being. We're still delivering cargo, still getting paid, still running our routes with perfect precision. But now I know we're delivering something else too. Delivering ourselves over and over, on a highway that loops through dimensions we don't have names for, carrying freight that exists and doesn't exist, getting paid in money that spends normally, but comes from accounts that shouldn't have our names on them. And every time we pass that junction, every time the CB picks up that empty channel with our voices underneath the static, I hear myself saying those same 2 words, turn back. But we never do. We can't. Because we don't know which direction back is anymore. We just keep driving forward and forward and forward on highways that run parallel to themselves, delivering cargo that arrives twice, getting paid for freight that exists in both states simultaneously. The road goes on forever, and we go with it, duplicated, multiplied, existing in echo. The cargo manifest said, medical equipment. But medical equipment doesn't synchronize its breathing with yours when you're driving alone at 70 miles per hour. I've specialized in sealed cargo for 15 years now. Pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, confidential shipments, anything that requires climate control and absolute security. The job pays well because you follow strict rules. Never open the trailer, never ask questions about contents, never deviate from the route. Load it, seal it, deliver it, collect your payment. I've maintained a perfect record for 15 years by following those rules exactly. The pickup was routine. Medical facility on the outskirts of town, loading dock supervisor who barely made eye contact. Standard paperwork listing the cargo as medical equipment, temperature sensitive. They sealed the trailer themselves, handed me the documentation, confirmed the delivery address. 600 miles, mountain pass route, delivery by morning. I'd run similar jobs 100 times. The first 2 hours were normal. Smooth highway, light traffic, trailer running at the programmed temperature of 38 degrees. I monitored everything on my dashboard display. Tire pressure, cargo weight, internal climate, all nominal. Just another overnight haul through familiar territory. The mountain pass started around midnight. Long, winding climb, engine working harder, the kind of driving that requires full attention. That's when I first heard it. A rhythmic sound from the trailer, soft but distinct. At first, I thought it was the climate control system cycling, but the rhythm was wrong. Too organic, too regular. It sounded like breathing. I checked my mirrors. Confirmed the trailer was still sealed, doors locked and showing green on my security display. Everything secure. But that sound continued, a steady inhale and exhale that seemed to match the climb of the pass, getting slightly faster as the road got steeper. I slowed down, reduced my own breathing rate deliberately, trying to isolate the sound. And that's when I realized the breathing from the trailer slowed to match. When I held my breath for a 10 count, the sound stopped completely. When I resumed breathing normally, it started again, perfectly synchronized. My hands tightened on the wheel. Medical equipment doesn't breathe, doesn't synchronize with human respiration. I was alone in the cab. But something in that sealed trailer was matching my biological rhythm with impossible precision. I pulled onto the shoulder, engaged the parking brake, sat in silence, trying to rationalize what I was hearing. Maybe it was an air pressure equalization system. Maybe the climate control had a feedback loop. Maybe I was more tired than I thought, and my brain was creating patterns from random mechanical noise. I got out, walked around to the trailer, checked the seals with my flashlight. All intact, no signs of tampering, security sensors showing green. I pressed my ear against the cold metal of the trailer door. Silence. Complete silence. I held my breath. Counted to 10. Nothing. Then I exhaled, and from inside the trailer, something exhaled with me. I jumped back from the door, heart hammering. Whatever was in there wasn't just making noise. It was responding, aware, listening to me the same way I was listening to it. I got back in the cab, called dispatch on the satellite phone. This is Unit 447. I need confirmation on my current cargo manifest. Static, then. Unit 447. Your manifest shows medical equipment, climate-controlled, standard delivery protocol. Is there a problem? What kind of medical equipment specifically? That information is confidential. You know the protocol. Sealed cargo means sealed information. I'm hearing something from the trailer. Something that shouldn't be there. More static. Longer this time. Then, Unit 447. We have no record of your current assignment. Can you confirm your truck ID number? I read off my truck identification, the same number I'd been using for 15 years. The same number that was painted on my cab door and programmed into every system. No match in our database. Are you sure you're calling the right dispatch? My blood went cold. I've been driving for your company for 15 years. You assigned me this route 6 hours ago. Sir, we have no record of a Unit 447. Please confirm your location and we'll send assistance. I ended the call, stared at the phone. That wasn't possible. I had documentation, paperwork, company credentials. But somewhere between the loading dock and this mountain pass, I'd apparently ceased to exist in their system. The breathing from the trailer was getting louder now, more insistent. And it had changed, no longer matching my rhythm, but establishing its own. One heartbeat, strong and steady, coming from somewhere behind me, vibrating through the cab itself. I put my hand on the steering wheel and felt it pulse. The heartbeat wasn't coming from the trailer anymore. It was coming through the truck, through the metal and plastic and electronics. A biological rhythm in a mechanical system. And it wasn't my heartbeat. Mine was racing, panicked, twice the speed of this slow, steady pulse. Then I felt it again, and realized with horror that it was my heartbeat, the one in the steering wheel. My actual heart had stopped beating in my chest and started beating in the trailer instead. I pressed my hand to my chest, felt nothing. No pulse, no movement. Just stillness. But I was alive, conscious, breathing. My heart was just somewhere else. Maintaining my body from a distance, pumping from inside a sealed trailer 600 miles from its destination. The breathing changed again. Multiple rhythms now, layered over each other. Different patterns, different rates, different depths. It sounded like a dozen people breathing in that trailer, none of them matching my pattern, none of them matching each other. And underneath it all, that slow, steady heartbeat that used to be mine. I started driving again, because stopping seemed more dangerous than moving. The mountain pass continued to climb, and with each 100 feet of elevation, the breathing got louder. The trailer was rocking now. Gentle movement side to side, as if something inside was shifting position. The security display still showed green, doors sealed, temperature stable, no breach detected. But I could feel the cargo moving, could hear it adjusting itself, could sense it expanding. At the summit, the trailer doors bulged outward. I saw it in my mirror, the metal deforming from internal pressure, the seals straining but holding. Something inside that needed more space than the trailer could provide. Whatever was breathing in there had grown too large for its container. I pulled over again, hands shaking, and grabbed my phone to call 911. But when I unlocked the screen, my location services showed I didn't exist. The map was blank where I should be. No roads, no highway, no mountain pass. According to my phone, I was in the middle of empty space, miles from any mapped location. The breathing suddenly stopped. Complete silence from the trailer, from the cab, from the mountain around me. Even the wind seemed to hold still. Then a voice came through my CB radio, which I hadn't turned on. My voice, but not my voice. Deeper, older. Tired? Open the doors. No, I said aloud. To no one, to the voice, to myself. You have to open the doors. We need to be delivered. That's the job. That's always been the job. I got out of the cab, walked to the trailer, stood in front of those bulging doors with my key in my hand. Every instinct screamed not to open them. But the voice was right. The job was delivery, and I'd never failed to complete a delivery in 15 years. I turned the key, broke the seal, opened the doors. The trailer was empty, completely, utterly empty. Clean metal walls, climate control system humming, temperature display showing 38 degrees. No cargo, no medical equipment, no source for the breathing or the heartbeat or the pressure that had deformed the doors from inside. But the breathing continued, coming from the empty space itself. Coming from the air, from the absence of cargo, from the void where something should have been, but wasn't. I stood there, staring into that empty trailer, listening to a dozen invisible things breathe, feeling my relocated heartbeat pulse through metal walls, knowing I was looking at my cargo even though I couldn't see it. I closed the doors, got back in the cab, drove to the destination with the doors open, couldn't seal them again, wouldn't trap whatever was in there a second time. The breathing followed me the entire way, audible over the road noise, over the engine, over my own confused thoughts. But it didn't emerge, didn't escape, just breathed, steady and patient, waiting. The delivery address was a facility that didn't appear on any map. Small building, unmarked. 3 workers in white coveralls standing at the loading dock at 4 a.m. like they'd been expecting me. They unloaded nothing from my empty trailer using forklifts. I watched them carefully lift and transport empty air, stack it on pallets, wheel it into their facility. The whole process took 40 minutes. One of them handed me a tablet. Delivery confirmation. Signature required. The screen showed a complete manifest. Thousands of pounds of cargo, itemized and accounted for. I signed it, even though my trailer had been empty. Even though they'd unloaded nothing from nothing and wheeled it away like it had mass and substance. When they closed the trailer doors, the breathing stopped. The heartbeat in the steering wheel faded. I felt my own heart restart in my chest, resuming its rhythm like it had never left. The worker who'd given me the tablet nodded once. "Thank you for the delivery. Most drivers don't make it past the mountain pass. Most turn around when they realize what they're carrying." "What was I carrying?" I asked. He smiled, and it wasn't a comforting expression. The space between breaths, the pause between heartbeats, the empty moments where life should be but isn't. Someone needs those delivered. Someone's always collecting them. I drove away from that facility as the sun came up, and when I checked my phone, my location was back on the map. When I called dispatch, they confirmed my delivery, welcomed me back into their system, processed my payment without question. The money deposited normally. My record stayed perfect. The job was complete. But now, every sealed trailer I haul, I listen carefully in the quiet moments. And sometimes I hear it, that synchronized breathing, that relocated heartbeat, that sense that the cargo isn't what the manifest says it is. Sometimes cargo is the act of moving it. Sometimes you're not transporting things. You're transporting the empty spaces between things. And sometimes, late at night on empty highways, I wonder what happens to all those empty moments I delivered. Where do they go? Who needs them? And what are they building with all that collected absence, all those breathless pauses, all that empty space that somehow weighs more than everything we can see? I still take sealed cargo jobs, still follow the rules, still never ask questions. But now I know. Sometimes the cargo is inside the trailer, and sometimes the cargo is the act of confining it there. Sometimes you're not delivering medical equipment. Sometimes you're delivering the breathing itself. I took exit 52 to refuel and ended up back on the highway before exit 52, 11 times in a row, and the sun never finished setting. 35 years I've been driving trucks. This is my last year before retirement. One more year of overnight routes, long hauls across familiar highways. Then I'm done. I know every exit, every rest stop, every quirk of every interstate between here and the coast. I've driven this particular route so many times, I could do it with my eyes closed. Exit 52 has a truck stop with decent coffee and clean restrooms. I'd planned to refuel there, grab food, maybe rest for 20 minutes before pushing through to my destination. It was a routine stop on a routine route. The kind of decision I'd made 1,000 times without thinking. I took the exit at 4:47 p.m., checked my mirrors, signaled even though there was no traffic, guided my truck down the familiar off-ramp. The sun was low on the horizon, that golden hour light that makes everything look slightly unreal. I drove the 2 miles to the truck stop, filled my tank, went inside for coffee. 15 minutes later, I merged back onto the highway, accelerating through the gears, settling into cruising speed. My GPS showed me progressing normally, right on schedule. But then I saw it ahead of me, the sign for exit 52, approaching in my headlights, not receding in my mirror, approaching ahead. I checked my GPS again. It showed me miles past exit 52, continuing along my route exactly as expected. But the physical sign was right there, green and reflective in my headlights, announcing exit 52 in half a mile. I drove past it, confused but not yet worried. Maybe I'd misread the number. Maybe the previous exit had also been 52. Sometimes highways have that kind of numbering quirk. I continued driving, watching my GPS tick off miles, watching the sun hold its position near the horizon without dropping any lower. 10 minutes later, exit 52 appeared again. This time I pulled over before reaching it, stopped on the shoulder, and tried to make sense of what I was seeing. According to my GPS, I'd driven 15 miles past exit 52. According to the physical signs on the highway, I was approaching it again for the third time. The sun was still in the exact same position it had been 25 minutes ago, frozen in that golden hour moment. I took the exit again, thinking maybe I needed to break some kind of pattern, needed to commit to a different choice. This time I turned right instead of left at the bottom of the ramp, drove away from the truck stop, followed the access road for 3 miles before it curved back to a highway on-ramp. I merged back onto the highway and immediately saw exit 52 ahead of me. Fourth loop. My hands were getting sweaty on the wheel. This wasn't fatigue, wasn't confusion, wasn't a GPS error. This was something fundamentally wrong with the road itself. I was trapped in some kind of spatial loop, approaching the same exit over and over despite driving in a straight line away from it. I tried turning around, found a crossover in the median, executed an illegal U-turn, started driving in the opposite direction. The highway curved me forward somehow, roads bending in ways that didn't match their physical appearance. And within 5 minutes, I was approaching exit 52 again from the same direction I'd been traveling all along. Fifth loop. The sun hadn't moved. I checked my phone, 5:23 p.m. Checked it again 5 minutes later, 5:23 p.m. Time had stopped the same way space had stopped, both frozen in this loop around exit 52. Sixth loop. I took the exit, pulled into the truck stop, and went inside. Different cashier than before, or I thought it was different. But when I got closer, I realized it was the same person, same name tag, same uniform. But when I asked if she remembered me from 20 minutes ago, she looked at me like I was crazy. "First time I've seen you tonight," she said. I bought another coffee I didn't want and walked back to my truck. That's when I saw it. My truck parked 3 spaces over. Same model, same color, same company logo, same license plate. I walked over to it, looked inside. Keys in the ignition, empty cab, no driver. My heart was hammering now. I got in my original truck, or what I thought was my original truck, and drove back to the highway. This time I didn't take the exit. I kept driving past it, determined to break the loop by refusing to participate. The highway continued normally for 30 seconds. Then it curved, not sharply, just a gentle bend that felt wrong somehow, like the road was folding back on itself. And there ahead was exit 52 again. 7th loop, 8th loop, 9th loop. I stopped counting, just kept driving, kept seeing that exit approach, kept watching the sun refuse to set. My GPS showed me hundreds of miles from where I'd started, showed me making perfect progress, showed arrival time estimates that made sense if I was actually moving forward. But I wasn't moving forward. I was stuck in a 2-mile section of highway that existed on no map, repeating forever. On what I think was the 12th loop, I stayed at the truck stop instead of returning to the highway. Walked around the building to see what was behind it. Found my truck parked there. And another one. And another. 5 identical trucks now, all empty, all with keys in the ignition, all mine. I picked one at random, got in, drove away from the highway completely. Took surface streets, back roads, anything to avoid returning to that exit. The roads curved me back. Every turn I made, every direction I chose. Somehow the pavement guided me back to exit 52's approach. The sun still hadn't moved. I tried calling dispatch but got no signal. Tried calling anyone, but my phone said no service despite showing full bars. The only thing that worked was my GPS, and it kept insisting I was making perfect forward progress while I drove the same loop over and over. Or maybe the 15th loop, I just kept driving. Didn't take the exit, didn't pull over, didn't try to turn around. Just drove straight past exit 52, watching it in my mirror as it receded behind me. The highway stretched ahead, normal and empty. For 3 hours I drove like that. The sun finally started setting, dropping below the horizon and fast forward like it was making up for lost time. My GPS showed normal progress, normal location, normal everything. Exit 52 didn't reappear. I arrived at my destination 3 days late, not 3 hours, 3 days. The delivery supervisor was angry, asking why I'd gone dark for 72 hours, why I hadn't called, why I'd missed every checkpoint. I tried to explain about the loop, about exit 52, about time stopping and the sun freezing and my truck multiplying. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. My GPS log showed a normal trip. No loops, no delays, no missing time. Just a straight drive from origin to destination, except somehow it had taken 3 days instead of 1 night. My phone's timestamp showed 3 days had passed. My body felt like 3 days had passed. Stubble on my face, hunger, exhaustion. But I only remembered those few hours in the loop, watching the same exit approach over and over while the sun refused to set. I checked my route history later, pulled up satellite images of exit 52. It exists. Normal truck stop, normal access roads, normal highway junction. Nothing unusual about it. But when I zoomed in on the satellite view, I could see them. 5 trucks parked behind the building in a neat row, all the same model, all with the same markings. My trucks, still there, still waiting. I retired 2 months after that trip. Couldn't do it anymore. But sometimes I'll be driving my personal car, just running errands, and I'll see an exit 52 on a highway that doesn't have an exit 52. The sign will be there for just a moment, visible in my peripheral vision, then gone when I look directly at it. I never take those exits, never pull over near them, never acknowledge them, because I know they're still out there. Those loops in the highway where time stops and space folds back on itself. Places where you can drive forward forever and never leave. Where the sun refuses to set because the day isn't done with you yet. Where your truck multiplies because every version of you that entered the loop is still in there, still driving, still approaching exit 52 over and over. I wonder how many drivers are stuck in loops like that right now. How many have been driving the same stretch of highway for days, weeks, years, watching their GPS tell them they're making progress while the same exit approaches again and again. How many duplicate trucks are parked behind how many truck stops, abandoned by drivers who gave up trying to escape, who picked a different version of their own truck and hoped that one would break free. And I wonder about those 3 days I lost. Where did they go? What happened during those 72 hours that my body experienced, but my memory doesn't contain? Was I still in the loop, driving those same 2 miles thousands of times? Or did the loop finally let me go, and I just can't remember the transition? Sometimes, late at night, I feel like I'm still there. Still approaching exit 52. Still watching that sun hover at the horizon, refusing to set. Still seeing that sign appear ahead of me, no matter which direction I drive. And I think, maybe I never left. Maybe I'm still in the loop, and this, retirement, normal life, freedom from the road. Maybe this is just what my mind created to cope with the endless repetition. Maybe I've been driving past exit 52 for years now, and everything since is just a dream I'm having in the cab of a truck that's been circling the same 2 miles since 2019. The sun is setting outside my window right now. I've been watching it for the past hour. It hasn't moved. The weigh station scale said I was 180 pounds over. Exactly the weight of the person sitting in my passenger seat that only the scale could see. I'm an independent owner-operator, which means I know my truck's weight down to the last pound. I know what the cab weighs empty, what it weighs with me in it, what it weighs with a full tank versus half. I know my cargo weight before I load it, after I load it, and at every point along the route. Precision matters when you own your own rig. Overweight violations cost money I can't afford to lose. So when I pulled into the mandatory weigh station at 3 a.m. and the scale showed 180 pounds over my calculated weight, I knew something was wrong immediately. The inspector came out of the station building, clipboard in hand, that expression they all have. Tired, skeptical, already convinced you're trying to cheat the system somehow. He checked my manifest, walked around my truck with his flashlight, then came to my driver's side window. "You've got a passenger," he said. "No, I don't. I'm solo on this run." He looked at me like I was stupid. "Sir, there's someone in your passenger seat. I need to see their ID." I turned to look. The passenger seat was empty. Just my jacket thrown there, my thermos, some paperwork. There's nobody there. The inspector's expression didn't change. He walked around to the passenger side, opened the door without asking permission, and stood there looking at the empty seat. Then he said, "Sir, I need you to ask your passenger to provide identification." My stomach went cold. He was looking directly at the empty seat, addressing it like someone was sitting there. I could see his eyes tracking something, following movement I couldn't see. "There is no passenger," I said slowly. "The scale doesn't lie," he said. He was writing something on his clipboard now. "White male, appears to be mid-40s, wearing a dark coat, refusing to provide ID." He looked back at the empty seat. "Sir, this is a mandatory inspection. I need to see your identification, or you'll both be detained." I got out of my cab, walked around to the passenger side. The seat was empty, completely, visibly empty. But the inspector was having a conversation with it, or with whoever he thought was sitting there, asking questions and waiting for responses I couldn't hear. "Look," I said, "I don't know what you think you're seeing, but there's nobody in that seat." He stopped writing and looked at me with something like pity. "You don't see him." "There's nothing to see." The inspector tapped his pen against his clipboard, thinking. "The scale registered 180 pounds over your declared weight. That's consistent with an adult male passenger. My visual confirmation shows someone in your passenger seat. You're telling me you don't see anyone there?" "The seat is empty." He nodded slowly. "Okay. I'm going to write you a citation for failure to declare a passenger. You can contest it, but the scale data and my visual confirmation are going in the report. You're free to continue your route, but I'm noting this incident." He handed me the citation. I looked at it under my flashlight. He'd written a description of my passenger. Middle-aged male, dark coat, no ID provided. The weight discrepancy was documented. Everything official and proper, except for the fact that he'd described someone who didn't exist. I got back in my cab and drove away from the weigh station, hands shaking. The citation was real paper, real ink, real consequences if I didn't pay it or contest it. But it was for a passenger that wasn't there. Except as I accelerated back onto the highway, I felt the passenger seat compress slightly. Just a subtle shift, like someone had been standing and just sat down. The seat didn't look any different. Still empty, still just my jacket and thermos. But I felt the weight of someone settling into it. I kept my eyes on the road, refused to look over, tried to convince myself it was my imagination. But then I checked my rearview mirror and saw it. Just for a split second, so brief I almost thought I'd imagined it. A reflection of someone in the passenger seat. A man in a dark coat, looking out the side window, gone before I could focus on him. The radio changed stations by itself. I hadn't touched it. It cycled through static, through music, through talk radio, until it landed on a news broadcast. Local news, 5 years old, based on the stories they were discussing. And one story in particular. A truck driver found dead at the weigh station I just left. Heart attack in his cab. Body discovered by an inspector during routine weigh-in. I reached over and turned off the radio. The passenger seat felt heavier now, the compression more obvious. I pulled up my truck's weight monitoring app on my phone. Independent drivers use them to avoid overweight violations, and watched the number. My weight was increasing. 180 pounds became 360, then 540, then 720. The truck was pulling hard to the right. Suspension groaning under weight that shouldn't be there. I slowed down, fighting to keep the vehicle straight, feeling the passenger side sink lower and lower, like someone was adding more and more weight to that seat. My CB radio crackled to life, even though I hadn't turned it on. A voice I didn't recognize, male, tired. "I'm not a passenger. I'm cargo." "Who are you?" I asked the empty cab. "Every driver who weighs me picks me up. Been riding these routes for 5 years now, since I died at that weigh station. Going from truck to truck, adding my weight, trying to get home." The weight continued to increase. My truck was barely maintaining highway speed now, engine straining. Where's home? Little town about 200 miles from here, where I was headed when my heart stopped. Never made the delivery. Been trying to complete it ever since. I looked at my route, checked my destination. I was going nowhere near any small town 200 miles away. But as I watched, my GPS began to recalculate, rerouting me without input, changing my destination to coordinates I hadn't entered. "I can't take you there," I said. "I've got a delivery to make. I've got a schedule." "Then I'll keep riding with you. Keep adding my weight. Keep getting picked up at that weigh station by the next driver and the next one and the one after that, until eventually someone takes me home." The weight was unbearable now. My truck was limping along at 40 miles per hour, hazards on, barely functional. Other vehicles were honking as they passed me, angry at my speed. I had to make a choice. I took the GPS's new route. The weight immediately stabilized. Still heavy, still affecting my handling, but no longer increasing. The passenger seat stopped sinking. In my mirror, I caught another glimpse of the man in the dark coat, clearer this time. He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Gratitude, maybe, or desperation, or just exhaustion. "Thank you," the CB radio said. I drove through the night, following coordinates I didn't understand, taking exits I hadn't planned, moving toward a destination that wasn't on my manifest. The weight in the passenger seat remained constant, 180 pounds, exactly what the weigh station had measured. Dawn was breaking when I pulled into a small town I'd never heard of. The GPS guided me to a freight depot, one of those family-owned places that's been operating since the 50s. I pulled into their lot and the weight suddenly dropped. The passenger seat returned to normal. In my mirror, I saw the man in the dark coat one last time. Standing outside my truck now, looking at the depot building, then looking back at me, and nodding once, before he faded away completely. The depot manager came out, confused to see me. "Can I help you?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I was routed here." He looked at my truck, looked at me, then his expression changed. "You brought Marcus back." "Who's Marcus?" He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. The man in the dark coat, younger, smiling, standing in front of a truck. Marcus Thompson. Drove for us for 20 years. Died of a heart attack at a way station 5 years ago. His truck was found there, but we always wondered. He was so close to home. So close to completing his last run. We figured his spirit might be restless. I showed him the citation from the way station, the one describing an invisible passenger. He read it carefully, nodded slowly, then took a photo of it with his phone. Every driver who stopped at that way station after Marcus died reported the same thing, overweight reading of exactly 180 pounds. Some of them saw him, most didn't. But they all felt him. Marcus was a big guy, weighed about 180. He's been catching rides, trying to make it home. "He's here now," I said. "He made it." The manager's eyes got wet. "Thank you. Really, thank you for bringing him home." I sat in my truck for a long time after that, just processing. Then I rerouted to my actual destination, already 12 hours behind schedule, knowing I'd have to explain the delay, knowing I'd lose money on this job. But when I checked my delivery payment later, something strange had happened. Double payment, exactly double what I was owed, deposited from an account that showed Marcus Thompson's name. I still run past that way station once a month. The scale always shows my exact weight now. No passenger, no extra pounds, no invisible cargo. But sometimes my CB picks up a voice saying, "Thank you." And for just a moment, the passenger seat feels warm, like someone sat there briefly and then moved on. Marcus made it home. After 5 years of riding with strangers, of being weighed but not seen, of adding his burden to every truck that stopped at that station, he finally completed his last delivery. And now I understand something about these highways that I didn't before. Sometimes cargo isn't freight. Sometimes cargo is people, or what's left of them, trying to get where they needed to go. And sometimes the weight we carry isn't measured in pounds, but in unfinished journeys, in interrupted routes, in deliveries that death prevented but didn't cancel. The scale sees them, even when we can't. The scale always knows what we're really carrying. The white line on the edge of the highway detached from the pavement and started walking ahead of me like it was leading somewhere the road didn't go. I've been driving long-haul routes for 6 months now. I'm still new enough that veteran drivers give me advice at truck stops, still learning which rest areas have the best coffee, still getting used to the isolation of overnight drives. But I'm good at following rules. And the most important rule for coastal highway driving in heavy fog is simple. Follow the fog line, not your GPS. The dispatcher told me this before my first coastal run. When the fog gets thick, and it will get thick, you keep your eyes on that white line on the right side of the road. Don't trust your GPS, don't trust your instincts, don't trust anything except that line. It'll keep you on the road when you can't see 5 feet ahead. The fog rolled in around 2 a.m., thick and fast like someone had flipped a switch. One moment I had clear visibility. The next I was swimming through white emptiness, with my headlights reflecting back at me uselessly. I slowed to 40 miles per hour, leaned forward in my seat, and focused on the fog line like I'd been taught. That solid white line on the right edge of the pavement became my entire world. Everything else disappeared, the road ahead, the sky above, the landscape around me. Just that line, steady and reliable, guiding me through the fog. Except after about 20 minutes, the line started moving. not in the normal way where it appears to move because you're driving past it. It was actually shifting position, drifting slightly left, then right, like it was adjusting its course independent of the pavement it was painted on. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks from staring too long at one fixed point. But the movement continued. The fog line veered away from where the road should be. My GPS showed me on the highway, following the mapped route perfectly. But the physical line I was following had detached from that route and was leading me somewhere else. I should have stopped. Should have pulled over, waited for the fog to clear, called dispatch for guidance. But the veteran driver's warning echoed in my head. Follow the fog line. Don't trust your GPS. So I followed the line, even as it led me away from the mapped highway, even as my GPS started showing me off-road, even as every logical part of my brain screamed that I was driving into empty space. The line split. One line continued forward, presumably following the actual road. The other angled sharply right toward what my GPS showed as cliff edge, toward the ocean that I knew was somewhere below in the darkness and fog. I had maybe 2 seconds to choose. I followed the continuing line, the one that looked like road, the one that felt safer. And that's when things got worse. Roadside reflector poles appeared in my peripheral vision, those tall markers with the reflective strips that show the road's edge. But these weren't planted in the ground. They were walking, pacing alongside my truck like escorts, keeping perfect formation, their reflective strips catching my headlights as they moved. I was surrounded by walking infrastructure, a fog line that had detached from the pavement, leading me forward. Reflector poles marching in formation on either side. And somewhere beneath my tires, hopefully, actual road, though I couldn't see it, couldn't confirm it, could only trust that I was still driving on something solid. The fog cleared for just a moment, just 3 seconds of visibility. I was on a narrow strip of highway suspended in empty space. Ocean hundreds of feet below, visible through breaks in the fog. No connection to land in either direction. No on-ramps, no off-ramps, no supporting structure. Just a ribbon of pavement hanging in the air, like someone had cut it free from the earth and left it floating. Then the fog closed back in, and I couldn't see anything except the fog line, still moving ahead of me, still leading me forward on this impossible road. My hands were locked on the steering wheel, my foot steady on the gas pedal. I didn't dare slow down, didn't dare speed up, didn't dare do anything except follow that line because what other choice did I have? Behind me was gone, consumed by fog. Around me was empty air. Ahead was only the line, walking forward into white emptiness. The line stopped moving. My truck stopped too, engine idling, still in gear but motionless, like something had physically grabbed it and held it in place. I sat there in the fog, on a suspended section of highway that couldn't exist, following a painted line that had gained autonomy, and waited for something to happen. The fog line started moving again, but this time it wasn't following existing pavement. It was creating new road. I watched as the white paint extended forward from where it had stopped, drawing itself onto nothing, and wherever it drew, pavement appeared. Fresh asphalt materializing beneath the painted line, building highway second by second, extending the suspended road forward into empty space. My engine started itself. I didn't turn the key, didn't touch anything. But the truck shifted into gear and began rolling forward onto the road that was being painted into existence beneath my wheels. The fog line stayed exactly 1 truck length ahead of me, drawing pavement, creating highway, building a route out of nothing. I had no control. The truck drove itself, following the line that was creating the road, moving forward onto asphalt that hadn't existed a second earlier. All I could do was sit there and watch as reality bent around the fog line's authority. As the rules of physics accommodated its decision that there should be a road here. As empty space filled in with highway because the line said so. This continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The fog line drawing pavement, my truck following, new highway materializing from nothing. Then the line connected to something. I felt it in the truck's suspension, a subtle shift from impossible road to normal road. The fog line merged with an existing highway, returned to being a painted mark on solid ground, stopped moving independently. The fog dissipated almost immediately once we reached the normal highway. I could see again. Regular road, regular surroundings, regular reality. My GPS location snapped back to the mapped route, showing me exactly where I should be with perfect timing. Like I'd never left the highway, never followed a walking fog line, never driven on a suspended section of road that had been painted into existence. I pulled over as soon as I found a safe spot, got out on shaky legs, walked around my truck looking for evidence of what had just happened. My tires were fine, my undercarriage was fine, everything was normal. I checked my dashcam footage, hands trembling as I scrolled through the recording. The video showed normal highway driving, thick fog, reduced visibility, careful, slow progress. The fog line behaved normally, stayed put, marked the road's edge like it was supposed to. No walking infrastructure, no suspended highway, no road being drawn into existence. Just standard coastal driving in heavy fog. But I knew what I'd experienced, knew I'd followed that line off the mapped route, knew I'd driven on impossible highway suspended over the ocean. Knew the fog line had created new road because the old road wasn't there anymore. I called the veteran driver who'd given me the advice about following the fog line, told him what happened. He listened in silence, then said something that made my blood run cold. The fog line doesn't just mark the road. It decides the road. When the fog is too thick, when visibility is zero, when the pavement is gone, the line remembers where we need to go. It knows the route better than the concrete does. And when there's no road left, it makes one. You're not the first driver to follow the line off the map. You won't be the last. I've completed that coastal route 20 times since that night. Same highway, same fog conditions. The veteran drivers all know about it, all have stories about following the line to places that don't exist. About watching it draw new roads in real time. About trusting it more than their eyes, or their GPS, or their understanding of reality. The fog line has never led a driver wrong. Not once in the decades that people have been running this route. It always gets them to their destination, always keeps them safe, always finds a way forward, even when the way forward has been consumed by fog or time or coastal erosion. But here's what haunts me. If the fog line can create roads when they're needed, what happens to those roads after we've driven them? Do they stay there, suspended over the ocean, waiting for the next driver? Or do they dissolve back into impossibility, temporary constructions that exist only as long as someone's following the line? And if the line can create physical reality, can paint pavement into existence, can build highways out of nothing, what else can it do? What else is it doing all the time, on every road we drive, that we only notice when the fog gets thick enough to hide the normal world? I don't trust my GPS anymore on that coastal route. I don't trust my eyes or my maps or my understanding of where roads should be. I trust the line, the walking, painting, reality-bending fog line that decides where the highway goes regardless of what physics or engineering or common sense says is possible. Because I've seen it create a road out of empty air. I've driven on pavement that was painted into existence second by second. I've been guided safely through impossible space by a line that cares more about getting drivers home than about whether the route it chooses actually exists. The fog line walks. The fog line creates. The fog line decides. And when the fog is thick enough, when visibility is zero, when you're alone on a coastal highway with nothing but white emptiness ahead, you follow it. No matter where it leads, no matter how impossible the route looks. Because the line knows the way home, even when home requires driving on roads that haven't been built yet, won't be built ever, exist only in the moment you're driving on them. The line knows. The line always knows. And that's more terrifying than any fog. My CB picked up a traffic report about an accident involving my truck, my cargo, and my route. 12 hours before I started driving it. I'm a CB radio enthusiast, have been for 25 years of driving. I monitor multiple channels, know the regular voices and call signs, participate in the trucker network that keeps us all informed about road conditions, speed traps, weather problems. The CB is more than just equipment to me. It's my connection to a community, my lifeline on lonely routes, my early warning system for problems ahead. So when my CB activated at 6 p.m. with a traffic report, I was listening like I always do. Standard format, professional delivery, someone reporting an accident at mile marker 134. White Freightliner, refrigerated cargo, complete trailer jackknife, one lane blocked, delays expected. That was my truck. My cargo, my planned route. But I wasn't driving yet. I wasn't scheduled to depart until 6 a.m. the next morning. The accident being reported hadn't happened yet. Couldn't happen yet. I was parked at a truck stop, engine off, 12 hours away from even starting that route. I grabbed my logbook, checked my details. White Freightliner, check. Refrigerated cargo, check. Route that passed mile marker 134, check. Everything matched except the timing. The accident was being reported as current, active, happening right now. But I was sitting in a parking space drinking coffee. Nowhere near mile marker 134, nowhere near my truck even. I was inside the truck stop restaurant. I walked out to my truck, checked it over, parked, secure, undamaged. No accident, no jackknife. Just a truck waiting to start tomorrow's route. The CB crackled again. Different voice this time, responding to the first report. This is Red Dog. I'm approaching mile marker 134 now. I can see the Freightliner. Looks bad. Driver's out of the cab. Appears okay but shaken up. Cargo might be compromised. I keyed my CB. This is Unit 447. I'm the driver of that Freightliner. I'm currently parked at a truck stop 200 miles from mile marker 134. There is no accident. Silence on the CB. Then the original voice. Unit 447. We have visual confirmation of your vehicle at mile marker 134. Are you saying you're not at the scene? I'm not on the road yet. I don't start driving until tomorrow morning. More silence. Then Red Dog's voice. Unit 447. I'm looking at your truck right now. White Freightliner, your company logo, your trailer number. It's jackknifed across 2 lanes. My hands were shaking. I looked at my truck, parked, intact. Impossible to be in 2 places at once. But multiple drivers were reporting seeing it crashed at mile marker 134, seeing it right now, in real time, having an accident that wouldn't happen for 12 more hours. I went back inside, sat down with my coffee, tried to make sense of it. Tried to convince myself it was a different truck, a coincidence, mistaken identity. But then the CB activated again, and I heard my own voice. This is Unit 447, I'm okay. Truck's damaged, but I'm not hurt. Something ran across the road, I swerved, lost control. Refrigerated cargo's probably ruined. That was me. My voice, my cadence, my call sign, describing an accident I hadn't had yet, reporting from a location I wasn't at, speaking words I hadn't said. I sat there listening to myself give a statement to Highway Patrol, listening to other truckers discuss the accident, listening to road condition updates that included my truck as an obstacle. All of it happening now, being broadcast now, but describing events 12 hours in my future. Over the next few hours, the CB continued to report on my accident. Tow trucks arriving, cargo being transferred to another vehicle, my truck being hauled away. I listened to every update, heard my own voice several more times answering questions, coordinating with dispatch, explaining what had happened. All of this while I sat in a truck stop restaurant, my actual truck parked outside undamaged, my actual self drinking coffee, and trying to understand how I was simultaneously crashed at mile marker 134. At midnight, I checked the CB again. The accident reports had stopped. New traffic flowing normally through mile marker 134. My truck removed, scene cleared, everything back to normal. According to the CB timeline, my accident had happened, been resolved, and traffic had resumed. All in the past now. Except for me, it was still 6 hours in the future. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in my truck monitoring the CB, listening to normal traffic, hearing other drivers report on weather and road conditions. Everything normal except for the fact that I'd heard my own accident reported, resolved, and forgotten before it had happened. At 6 a.m., I started my route as planned. Loaded my refrigerated cargo, performed my pre-trip inspection, pulled out of the truck stop and headed toward the highway. My CB was active, tuned to my regular channels, functioning normally. I passed mile marker 100, then 110, then 120. The CB was reporting normal traffic conditions. No accidents, no delays, no problems. Just routine updates from other drivers on the road. Mile marker 130 approached. My hands tightened on the wheel. According to what I'd heard 12 hours ago, I was about to have an accident at mile marker 134. Something would run across the road. I would swerve. I would lose control. I slowed down to 55 miles per hour, hazard lights on, every sense alert for anything crossing my path. Mile marker 131, mile marker 132, mile marker 133, mile marker 134 appeared ahead of me. Nothing happened. Clear road, good visibility, no animals, no obstacles, no reason to swerve. I passed mile marker 134 at exactly the speed and position I'd maintained. No accident, no jackknife, no loss of control. In my mirror, mile marker 134 receded behind me normally. I'd passed the point where my accident was supposed to happen and nothing had occurred. I keyed my CB. This is Unit 447, passing mile marker 134, no incidents to report. No response. I tried again on different channels. Silence. Then my CB crackled with the original traffic report voice. Unit 447, we show you involved in an accident at mile marker 134. Please confirm your status. Negative, no accident. I just passed that marker with no incidents. Unit 447, multiple drivers are reporting visual confirmation of your vehicle jackknifed at that location. Please confirm you're at the scene. I looked in my mirror again. Mile marker 134 was a mile behind me now. Road was clear, traffic flowing normally. I am not at any accident scene. I passed mile marker 134 without incident. Road is clear. Long silence. Then a different voice. One I didn't recognize. If you're hearing this, you already know what happened. The accident isn't traffic. The accident is learning you can't change it. A chill ran down my spine. Then I saw it ahead of me. Another truck approaching from the opposite direction. White Freightliner. Same model as mine. Same company logo. The driver had my face. The other truck passed me, and I watched it in my mirror. It reached mile marker 134, swerved suddenly for no visible reason, jackknifed exactly as the CB reports had described 12 hours earlier. The trailer swung across both lanes. The truck lost control, everything happening exactly as predicted. I pulled over, watched emergency vehicles arrive at the scene behind me, watched them extract the driver, who looked like me, sounded like me when he spoke to the responders, used my call sign when he reported the incident. But I was here, a mile away, uninvolved, undamaged. The accident had happened, just not to me. Someone else, some other version of me, had fulfilled the prediction. I called my dispatch to report what I'd seen. They had no record of another truck matching my description. According to their system, I was the only Unit 447, the only white freightliner with that cargo, the only driver with my name on that route. The driver at the accident scene, the one who looked like me, was listed in the official reports as me. My name, my license number, my truck identification. But I was still driving, still en route, still making my delivery. That was 5 years ago. I still drive that route regularly, and my CB is now permanently stuck receiving broadcasts from 24 hours in the future. Weather reports before the weather happens, traffic updates before the traffic exists, conversations I'll have tomorrow, playing today. At first, I thought this would help me. Let me dodge problems, optimize my routes, avoid delays before they happen. But I learned quickly, you can't dodge what's already happened. The future isn't a warning. It's a recording of events that are fixed, inevitable, unchangeable. I hear my own voice on the CB regularly, reporting conditions I haven't encountered yet, discussing problems I haven't experienced, having conversations I'll remember having had already. Time isn't linear on these channels anymore. It's looped, recursive, playing tomorrow's news today and today's news yesterday. The accident still shows up in official records as happening to me, even though I wasn't involved. The driver who crashed at mile marker 134 was listed as me in every system, every database, every report. But he wasn't me. He was someone else who had my face and my call sign and my truck, who existed just long enough to fulfill the prediction before disappearing from record. I think the CB isn't receiving future broadcasts. I think it's receiving broadcasts from all times simultaneously, and we only notice the future ones because those are the ones that create paradox. The accident was reported before it happened because it was being reported while it happened from the perspective of a timeline that doesn't flow the same direction as ours. Sometimes, late at night, I'll hear my own voice on the CB saying things I don't remember saying. Sometimes it's me from last week. Sometimes it's me from next month. Sometimes it's me from timelines where I made different choices, took different routes, had different accidents. And I wonder, how many versions of me are out there? All using the same call sign, all driving variations of the same routes, all broadcasting to each other across temporal channels we don't understand. How many accidents have I had that I don't remember? How many times have I crashed at mile marker 134 in timelines adjacent to this one? The CB is always transmitting, always receiving, always playing conversations that happened, are happening, will happen, might happen. Time isn't a highway you drive along. It's a CB channel that's broadcasting everything at once. And once you tune in to tomorrow, yesterday never stops catching up. My cargo weighed 8,000 pounds at the first weigh station and 47,000 pounds at the fourth. But when I opened the trailer, it was still just 6 empty crates. I'm an independent hauler specializing in what the industry calls specialty cargo. Legal shipments that require confidentiality, secure handling, and drivers who don't ask questions. The pay is excellent because discretion is mandatory. You load what they tell you to load, you deliver where they tell you to deliver, and you never discuss the contents with anyone. The pickup was at a nondescript warehouse on the edge of an industrial district. 6 sealed wooden crates, each about 3 feet square, loaded onto my flatbed trailer. The shipping supervisor verified the weight with me. 8,000 pounds total, well within my capacity. We both watched the scale. Both confirmed the number. Both signed the documentation. Standard procedure for specialty cargo. I secured the crates with straps and chains, covered everything with a tarp, and headed out. First weigh station was 40 miles into my route. Mandatory stop, all commercial vehicles. I pulled onto the scales, waited for the measurement. The digital display showed 14,000 pounds. I frowned, checked my paperwork. 8,000 pounds at origin, plus my truck weight should give me a specific total. But the scale was showing 6,000 pounds more than expected. The inspector came out, looked at my manifest, looked at his scale reading. "You're showing heavier than your paperwork indicates," he said. "I know. I loaded at 8,000 pounds 40 miles ago. Nothing's been added." He walked around my truck, checked my load. 6 crates, properly secured. Nothing unusual. "Scale doesn't lie. You're 6,000 pounds over your manifest. But..." He paused, rechecked something on his tablet. "Your truck weight is correct, so the extra weight is in your cargo." "That's impossible. I watched it loaded. I confirmed the weight myself." He shrugged. "Take it up with your shipper. You're cleared to continue, but you're technically overweight relative to your documentation. Get it sorted." I pulled away from the weigh station confused, but not yet worried. Maybe there'd been a mistake at origin. Maybe the crates were heavier than initially measured. I'd call the shipper at my next stop and clarify. 50 miles later, second mandatory weigh station. I pulled onto the scales expecting to see the same 14,000 pounds. The display showed 23,000 pounds. My cargo had gained another 9,000 pounds in 50 miles. I got out immediately. Walked back to my trailer, pulled off the tarp. 6 crates, identical to when I'd loaded them. Same size, same appearance, same securing straps showing the same tension. Nothing had changed visibly, but something had added 9,000 pounds to my load. The inspector was more concerned this time. "Sir, this is a significant discrepancy. I need you to open your cargo for inspection." "It's sealed cargo. I'm not authorized to open it." "You're 15,000 pounds over your manifest. That's a serious violation. Either you open it, or I call law enforcement and they'll open it." I made the call. Cut the seals on the first crate, pried open the lid. Inside was another sealed crate, smaller, maybe 2 feet square. I looked at the inspector. He nodded. I opened that one. Another crate inside, even smaller. And inside that one, another. It was crates all the way down. Each one sealed, each one containing a smaller version of itself. Infinite regression of containers that somehow fit inside each other, despite the math being impossible. "What the hell is this?" the inspector said, staring at the nested crates. "I don't know. I just haul what I'm given." He checked the innermost crate we'd reached, maybe 6 inches square. "This one's sealed too. How deep does this go?" "I have no idea." He made me seal everything back up, gave me a warning citation, and let me continue. But his parting words stuck with me. "Whatever you're hauling, it's getting heavier. That's not normal. That's not physics. Watch your weight at the next station." Third weigh station, 70 miles later, 34,000 pounds. Another 11,000 pound gain. My trailer was groaning now, suspension compressed. Truck struggling to maintain highway speed. but the crates looked identical. Same dimensions, same appearance, nothing physically different. I called my shipper, got a recorded message saying the number was no longer in service. Called the warehouse where I'd picked up. No answer. Looked at my manifest more carefully. The company logo was unfamiliar. The address was a P.O. box. The contact information all led to dead ends. I was hauling cargo for a company that apparently didn't exist. Cargo that was gaining impossible amounts of weight. Cargo that contained infinite nested versions of itself. Fourth way station, 47,000 pounds. I was now dangerously overweight, nearly at the limit of what my truck could handle. The inspector threatened to detain me, demanded I explain the weight gain. I had no explanation. He made me open the crates again. We went deeper into the nested containers this time, opening layer after layer. Each crate contained a smaller crate, which contained a smaller crate, which contained a smaller crate. We opened 15 layers before the inspector gave up, frustrated and confused. At the center of all those nested containers, as far down as we got, was a sealed box maybe 2 inches square. The inspector picked it up, felt its weight. "This weighs nothing," he said. "Couple ounces at most." But my cargo weighed 47,000 pounds, according to the scale. 39,000 pounds more than I'd loaded. Gained from nothing, added by nothing, existing in violation of every physical law I understood. The inspector opened that tiny box. Inside was a photograph. He pulled it out, looked at it, then showed it to me. It was my truck, at a weigh station I hadn't reached yet. The digital scale in the photograph showed 103,000 pounds. "Where did you take this?" he asked. I didn't. I've never seen that photo before. He looked at the background details in the image, compared them to his current station. "This is here. This is my weigh station. But you haven't been through here before today, have you?" "First time on this route." He stared at the photo, then at me, then at the scale reading. "Your cargo isn't gaining weight. Your cargo is counting something else. Distance, maybe. Time. I don't know. But it's measuring something, and weight is just how it's displaying the measurement." He let me go with a warning to get the cargo off my truck as soon as possible. But I'd already figured something out. The weight gain wasn't random. At the first station, I'd gained 6,000 pounds. Second station, 9,000 pounds. Third station, 11,000 pounds. Fourth station, 13,000 pounds. The weight gain was accelerating in a pattern. And if the photograph was right, by the time I reached my destination, my cargo would weigh 103,000 pounds despite still being 6 empty nested crates. I drove carefully, monitoring my truck's performance, feeling the increasing strain on the suspension and engine. The cargo looked the same. The crates hadn't grown, hadn't changed, hadn't added any visible mass. But my truck drove like it was hauling twice its rated capacity. Final weigh station, 10 miles from my destination, 87,000 pounds. The scale could barely register it. My truck could barely move under the weight. But the cargo was still 6 crates, still the same dimensions, still apparently unchanged. The inspector at this station didn't even try to make sense of it. Just looked at the reading, looked at my cargo, looked back at the reading. I'm noting this as a scale malfunction. There's no way your cargo weighs what this says. Continue to your destination and get this off your truck. I crossed into the destination city limits, and something incredible happened. The weight dropped to 0. Instantly. Completely. My truck suddenly drove normally, suspension uncompressed, engine running easily. It was like someone had removed 87,000 pounds in a single moment. The delivery address was a facility that didn't appear on any GPS, no signage, no identification. Just a loading dock with 3 workers in unmarked coveralls waiting for me at dawn, like they'd known exactly when I'd arrive. They unloaded my 6 crates using forklifts. I watched them carefully. They handled the crates like they were heavy, maneuvered them with effort, stacked them with precision. But when I'd looked inside, they were nearly empty. Just nested containers going down and down. Yet these workers were treating them like they weighed exactly what the scales had measured. One of them handed me a tablet for signature confirmation. The delivery receipt showed 103,000 pounds of cargo received. Exactly what the photograph had predicted. Exactly what the final weigh station would have shown if I'd stopped there. What was I carrying? I asked the worker. He smiled slightly. Negative space. Distance compressed into containers. The absence of weight rather than the presence of it. Some cargo doesn't weigh what it is. It weighs what it means. The journey it travels, the distance it crosses, the impossibility of its existence. That all has weight. That doesn't make sense. No, he agreed. But the scales knew. The scales measured it accurately. You were hauling the weight of distance itself. Every mile you drove added to the cargo's measurement because the cargo was collecting the journey. By the time you arrived here, you'd transported 103,000 pounds of traveled distance. The payment cleared my account that afternoon. Full amount for 103,000 pounds of cargo delivered, despite the fact that I'd loaded only 8,000 pounds of physical crates. The manifest still showed specialty cargo, confidential contents, no further details. I still take specialty cargo jobs. Still don't ask questions. Still follow the protocol exactly. But now, when I load cargo and confirm the weight, I wonder, am I measuring what it is or what it will become? Am I weighing the cargo or am I weighing the journey ahead? And when the scales show numbers that don't match reality, are they malfunctioning or are they seeing something more true than what my eyes can confirm? The scales know what you're really carrying. They measure what you're transporting even when you can't see it, even when it violates physics, even when it's not the cargo itself, but the distance the cargo travels, the time it takes, the impossibility made real by the act of hauling it. Sometimes you're not moving freight. Sometimes you're moving meaning, compressed into containers, measured in pounds that represent something other than mass. And the scales always know the difference. The highway showed me how my father died. Played his last 3 minutes on loop in my windshield while I drove the exact route where it happened 15 years ago. I inherited my father's truck after he passed. Took over his routes, his client list, his reputation as a reliable driver who always delivered on time. But there was one route I'd been avoiding for 15 years, the mountain highway where he crashed. The company kept assigning it to other drivers, respecting my unspoken boundary, understanding why I couldn't drive the road where my father died. Until last month, when they had no choice. Driver shortage, critical delivery, and I was the only one available who knew the route well enough to make the timing work. They asked if I could handle it. I said yes because I needed the work. Needed to prove I could do this job without letting old ghosts interfere. I should have said no. The first 2 hours were fine. Normal mountain driving, familiar curves and grades, the kind of route I could drive in my sleep. I knew exactly where my father had crashed, a sharp curve at mile marker 47, where the road bent around a cliff edge with a steep drop on one side. I'd studied the accident report, read the investigation findings, understood exactly what had happened. Deer in the road, sudden swerve, loss of control, truck went over the edge. As I approached that curve, My windshield started showing double images. My current view of the road overlaid with another view. Same road, but different time, different weather, different lighting. Night instead of day. Rain instead of clear skies. And different truck, though the perspective was the same, like I was seeing through another driver's eyes. My father's eyes. I was watching his final approach to the curve, seeing what he saw in the moments before the crash. The overlay grew stronger, more detailed. I could see his dashboard reflected in the ghost image, could see his hands on the wheel in my peripheral vision, even though my own hands were there. Could hear, faintly, his radio playing a song I recognized, the same song that had been playing when they found the truck. The deer appeared in the overlay. Large buck, stepping into the road directly in his path. In my current reality, the road was empty. But in the overlay, in my father's last moments, the deer was there, inevitable, creating the split-second decision that ended everything. I watched his truck swerve in the ghost image. Watched the steering wheel turn hard right, watched the road disappear as the truck left the pavement. Watched the 3 seconds of freefall before impact, the windshield showing sky and trees and cliff face in rapid succession. Then the overlay reset and played again, and again, and again. I was still driving my own truck, still in control, still on the road. But the windshield was showing me my father's death on loop, replaying those final moments over and over, while I navigated the same curve where it happened. My hands were shaking. I wanted to pull over, wanted to stop watching. But the overlay was all-encompassing now. I could barely see my actual road through the ghost images of my father's final drive. Then the overlay changed. Different crash, different truck, different perspective. This one was older. The image quality suggested decades ago, maybe the 70s based on the dashboard design. Another driver, another approach to the same curve, another vehicle losing control. The highway was showing me every death that had occurred here. Multiple overlays now, layered on top of each other. Dozens of perspectives, dozens of drivers, dozens of crashes all happening simultaneously in my field of vision. Each one showed the final moments before impact. Different causes, different conditions, but all ending the same way. This curve had killed so many people over the years, and the highway was making me watch every single one. My steering wheel started pulling to the right. Not mechanically, my truck was fine, but like some invisible force was trying to guide me in the same direction all those overlay trucks had gone. Toward the edge, toward the drop, toward the same ending that had claimed my father and all the others. I fought the pull, hands locked on the wheel, conscious effort to keep the truck straight. But the overlays were making it hard to see the actual road, hard to judge where my lane was, hard to distinguish between past crashes and present driving. One overlay was getting stronger than the others. My father's, playing again, but this time with audio. I could hear him breathing, hear his CB radio crackling with traffic reports, hear the rain on his windshield. And then I heard him say something I'd never known he'd said. He was looking at exactly where I was right now, the approaching curve, the spot where I'd be driving in 3 seconds. And he mouthed one word to that future position. Brake. Not to himself, to me. Somehow, in his final moments, my father had been looking at the spot where he knew I'd be driving someday, looking at the moment when I'd finally run this route, and he tried to warn me. I hit the brakes hard. Full pressure, emergency stop, truck skidding on the pavement. I came to rest exactly where my father's truck had left the road 15 years ago. All the overlays froze. Every ghostly crash stopped mid-motion, every vehicle suspended in the moment of disaster. I sat there, engine idling, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, surrounded by dozens of frozen death scenes all layered over my windshield. I got out of the truck on shaky legs. The physical road was empty, just pavement and guardrail and cliff edge. But when I looked at where my truck sat, I could see them. Ghostly trucks, dozens of them. All stopped at their individual crash points, all transparent, all clearly not physically present, but all visible. The highway was showing me its collection, its permanent record of every driver who died here. My father's truck was among them. I could see it, overlay fading in and out, positioned exactly where the accident report said it had gone over. And in the driver's seat, barely visible, was my father. Not as I remembered him, but as he'd been in those final moments. Scared, fighting for control, aware he was going to die. He was looking directly at me, not at where his truck had been, but at where I was standing now. Seeing me across 15 years, across the boundary between life and death, across whatever strange property of this highway allowed the past to remain visible in the present. I walked to the edge where his truck had gone over. The guardrail had been replaced since then, reinforced, improved. But I could see the break in the overlay, could see exactly where he'd crashed through. "I got your message," I said to the ghost, to the memory, to whatever part of my father remained in this stretch of road. "Thank you." The overlay of his truck faded slightly, like acknowledgement. Like he'd been waiting 15 years for someone to receive his warning, for his final action to mean something beyond his own death. I got back in my truck and continued past the curve. The overlays disappeared gradually, fading as I put distance between myself and that specific spot. My windshield returned to showing only my current reality, only my own drive, only the present moment. I've run that route monthly since then. Same mountain highway, same deadly curve. The overlays still appear every time I approach mile marker 47, still show me my father's death and all the others. But now I understand what I'm seeing. The highway remembers. Not metaphorically, not poetically. It actually remembers. Every death, every crash, every final moment is recorded in the pavement somehow. Stored in the asphalt and concrete, accessible to drivers who pass through at the right time in the right conditions. And my father's warning saved me. That moment when he looked at where he knew I'd be, when he mouthed that single word across 15 years, that was him still protecting me. Still being my father even after death. Still trying to keep me safe on the roads he'd spent his life driving. I know now that the highway wanted to add me to its collection that day. Wanted me to follow the pattern, to repeat the crash, to join the permanent loop of deaths at mile marker 47. But my father's warning disrupted the pattern, broke the cycle, gave me the split-second advantage I needed to stop before the pull became too strong. Other drivers have told me they experience similar things on their routes. Roads that replay accidents, curves that show you how previous drivers died, stretches of highway that want to add you to their permanent record. It's more common than anyone admits. Because how do you explain something like that? How do you report that the road itself has memory, has awareness, has intention? I drive past that curve now, and I see my father every time. See him stopped at his crash point, watching me pass safely, his warning still echoing across the years. The highway remembers everyone, but it only replays for the ones it wants. It played my father's death for me because it wanted me to join him. But his final act of protection turned the replay into a warning instead of a trap. I think the highway's waiting. watching each time I pass to see if this is when I fail, when I don't brake in time, when I join the collection of ghostly trucks frozen at their crash points. And maybe someday I will. Maybe someday I'll be the overlay, replaying my final moments for some future driver, trying to warn them the same way my father warned me. But not today. Today I drive past safely, acknowledge the ghosts, honor the memory, and continue forward. Because my father died on this road. But he also saved me on this road. And that makes all the difference between being trapped in the highway's memory and learning from it. The route remembers everyone, but only some of us remember back. The package I picked up at midnight was already signed for at 11:30 p.m., 30 minutes before I loaded it into my van. I work as an overnight express courier, handling time-sensitive deliveries that can't wait until morning. Medical supplies, legal documents, emergency equipment, anything that absolutely has to arrive within hours, not days. I've been doing this for 3 years, built a reputation for reliability, for making impossible deadlines work, for getting packages to their destinations no matter what. This delivery seemed routine when I got the call. Critical package, needed before midnight. 4-hour drive to the destination. The client was paying triple rate for the urgency. I accepted the job immediately, drove to the pickup location, and loaded a small box marked medical supply, time critical, into my van at 11:45 p.m. The deadline had already passed. It was impossible to deliver before midnight when I was picking up 15 minutes before midnight and facing a 4-hour drive. But the dispatcher insisted, deliver as fast as possible. The client was waiting. Every minute counted. I checked the package manifest on my tablet before leaving. That's when I saw it. Delivery confirmation already on file. Package signed for at 11:30 p.m. Recipient signature recorded. Timestamp verified. Delivery complete. But the package was in my van. I was holding it. It hadn't been delivered yet. I called dispatch. There's an error in the system. Shows this package was already delivered 30 minutes ago. Confirmed, the dispatcher said. Delivery signature on file. Payment processed. Why are you calling? Because the package is still here, in my van. I just loaded it. Long silence. That's not possible. Our system shows successful delivery at the destination address at 11:30 p.m. Recipient confirmed receipt. I'm looking at the package right now. Then you're looking at the wrong package. Check your manifest number. I read off the number, heard typing on the other end. Then, that's the package that was delivered at 11:30. You shouldn't have it. But I do have it. The pickup location gave it to me 5 minutes ago. More silence. Just deliver it. Make the run. Something's glitched in the system. We'll sort it out. I started driving, but my GPS immediately did something strange. It began routing me through roads that didn't exist on the map. Side streets that appeared as blank spaces on the display, shortcuts through areas marked as private property, routes that cut through what should have been buildings or parks. I followed the GPS anyway. Sometimes it knows alternate routes that aren't officially mapped. But these weren't alternate routes. These were impossible routes. I drove through an underpass that shouldn't have existed, emerged 3 miles ahead of where physics said I should have been based on the distance traveled. My van's odometer showed 4 miles driven. My GPS showed I'd covered 15 miles. The time was 12:03 a.m., only 18 minutes since I'd left the pickup location. But I'd somehow traveled distance that should have taken an hour. I checked the package status on my tablet, still showing delivered at 11:30 p.m. I scanned the barcode with my handheld scanner to verify I had the right package. The scanner refused to register it as in transit. Every scan attempt returned the same message. Package already delivered. Status complete. The package was physically in my van, but every system insisted it had already been delivered an hour ago. The GPS continued routing me through impossible shortcuts. I drove through a tunnel that brought me out in a completely different part of the city than it should have. Took a right turn that somehow resulted in being 10 miles further along my route than the turn should have allowed. Reality was bending around my delivery, warping distance and time to make the route work backward. At 12:47 a.m., I arrived at the destination address. A residential house, lights on, someone visible through the window. I grabbed the package, walked to the door, and rang the bell. A woman in her 50s answered, looked at me confused. "Can I help you?" "Delivery," I said, holding up the package. "Time-critical medical supply." Her confusion deepened. "We already received that. It arrived at 11:30. "Ma'am, I have the package right here." She disappeared into the house, came back carrying an identical package. Same size, same markings, same manifest number on the label. "This arrived over an hour ago. We already signed for it." I was holding a package. She was holding a package. Both identical. Both showing the same manifest number. Both supposedly the same delivery. "Who delivered yours?" I asked. "You did. Or someone from your company. Young guy, same uniform you're wearing. Showed up right at 11:30, said it was urgent, we signed, he left." "That wasn't me. I picked this package up at 11:45. She showed me her signature on her tablet. "Official delivery confirmation. Timestamp 11:30 p.m. Recipient signature matching her name. Everything legitimate and proper." "But you're here now," she said, "with the same package. So either you're delivering it twice, or—" She trailed off, looking between the two identical packages. "May I see what's in the package you received?" I asked. She opened it carefully. Medical supply inside, exactly as labeled. Critical medication her husband needed. "This saved his life," she said quietly. "He needed this before midnight or— Well, the doctor said it was critical. When it arrived at 11:30, we were so relieved." I looked at the package I was holding. Identical in every way. "Would you accept this one too?" She looked uncertain. "Why would we need two?" "I don't know. But I was paid to deliver this. Someone sent it. Someone needed you to have it." She took the second package, opened it. Same medication inside, same quantity. "This doesn't make sense. We only ordered one." But I understood now. The package I was holding was the real delivery. The one I'd picked up at 11:45, driven through impossible routes, delivered at 12:47. But because her husband's life had depended on receiving it before midnight, because the need was absolute and critical, reality had accommodated that need. The first package, the one delivered at 11:30, the one that had arrived before I'd even picked mine up, that was necessity bending time and space to ensure the delivery happened when it needed to happen, not when it physically could happen. My package was what actually occurred. Her first package was what had to occur. Both existed because both were true in different ways. "My husband is okay because of the first delivery," she said. "What's the second one for?" "I think it's proof," I said. "Proof that I actually made the delivery. Proof that the impossible timing was real. Proof that sometimes packages arrive before they're sent because someone's life depends on it." She signed for my package on my tablet. The system accepted it, processed it, marked it as delivered at 12:47 a.m. Both deliveries now existed in the system. One at 11:30, one at 12:47. Same package, same recipient. Different realities somehow coexisting. I got paid for both deliveries. Double payment, from an account that didn't quite match my usual client billing. But the money was real and it cleared. I still do overnight courier runs. Still handle time-sensitive deliveries. But now I understand that time isn't always the barrier we think it is. When something needs to arrive, when a life hangs in the balance, when the necessity is absolute enough, reality makes accommodations. Sometimes I see duplicate packages in my van, sitting next to each other, identical manifest numbers, both real, both requiring delivery. And I know when I see them that I'm carrying a delivery that's already been delivered, or will be delivered, or is being delivered in multiple timelines simultaneously because someone's life depends on it arriving when it needs to arrive. Not when physics says it can arrive. The package I delivered that night had already saved a life before I'd even picked it up. But I still had to deliver it, had to complete the route, had to make the impossible timing work in reverse. Because both versions were real. The necessity version that arrived early and the physical version that arrived late. Time bent around that delivery. Created a loop, a paradox, a situation where cause followed effect instead of preceding it. And the highway accommodated it, warped distance and routing to make the impossible logistics work. Ensured I could deliver a package that had already been delivered because both deliveries were required for reality to make sense. I think about that night every time I get a critical delivery. Every time someone says before midnight, or as fast as possible, or life depends on this. Because I know now that if the need is absolute enough, the package will arrive when it needs to arrive. Whether I've picked it up yet or not. And somewhere in the routes I drive, in the impossible shortcuts my GPS finds, in the distance that doesn't match the odometer, somewhere in there, reality is constantly adjusting itself to ensure the critical deliveries make it on time, even if making it on time requires the delivery to happen before it's been sent. The package delivers itself when it has to. I'm just the proof that it also delivered normally. Both truths existing simultaneously, both deliveries real, both timelines valid. Because when someone's life is on the line, time becomes negotiable, and the highway knows how to bend.